Hey there guys, welcome back to ARTFX Studios, and this is bass design number 4. So since I'm gonna be reaching 20,000 subscribers really soon, I thought let's do a really in-depth tutorial on how to make a Neuro-ish kinda bass. And I've created a clip. As you can see, it's twice the same thing. The first one has a lot of chopped up parts of the longer recording, and the second part is actually that longer recording. So after the couple of upcoming 4-5 videos maybe, you're gonna be able to create sounds like this. The first video will contain me making the actual patch inside Massive. The second video will be adding other effects, just like the third video, and I'll explain everything step by step. I'm going to create a new MIDI track, and on this MIDI track I'm going to load up an instance of Massive. You can use any synth that you want. I'm using Massive because I know Massive inside out. And one thing the synth that you're picking definitely needs to have is a wavetable that has a lot of different kind of tones in it. For instance, Massive has a couple of different ones that have a lot of different sonic qualities in the actual wavetable. And one that is really famous for it is the Scrapyard. And the thing with the Scrapyard is, as soon as you move this WT position around, you're not gonna get, like, for this one, we can clearly see it's on the left it's a full square wave, and on the right it's a full saw wave, and in between you're mixing both of them together. So that's a really simple waveform, and when you automate that from the left side all the way to the right side, you're gonna get a transition between a square wave and a saw wave. For the Scrapyard, however, if I put in a note right here, so for the Scrapyard, as soon as I play this and then move this knob, we can hear that there's a lot of stuff going on. And when we compare that to the second oscillator, which is just a square saw wavetable, there's like only one sort of modulation in that wavetable, while in the scrapyard it contains a lot of different ones. And that's one thing that you definitely want to have. There are some other ones in here as well. That one has a couple of ones. That one as well. You see, so definitely the ones under the digital hybrid section in Massive, those are pretty good. There are definitely some really great ones in there. But I'm gonna use the scrapyard for the first one. So let's pick the scrapyard for this one, and I'm going to pitch it down 1 octave. Maybe 2. Yeah. So we'll keep this at -24, and I'm going to set the mode to band minus. It sort of creates a little bit more of a gritty kind of sound compared to the spectrum mode. I'm gonna go to the voicing tab, and I'm gonna make this a monophonic synth, and I'm also gonna bring up the glide time a little bit. Then I'm gonna go and bring up my amp envelopes level, so we're getting a fully sustained sound, no attack release, like that. So what I'm now going to do, I'm going to take out that note. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Okay, that sounds really interesting. So I can take LFO number 5 and turn this into a performer. I'm gonna sync it, and I'm gonna set the ratio to be 1/4. I'm also gonna keep restart activated, and what that does is that every single note that is triggered, it's going to restart the performer pattern, and that only happens when a note is triggered. So when it's gonna glide up into a different note, then that pattern will just continue playing. But when you're really triggering a new note, then it's definitely gonna start over in that performer pattern that we're gonna create. If I connect this particular one to the scrapyard, and let's make it really obvious. So you can hear that every time a note is triggered, it restarts the pattern in the performer. Let's make a shape going up a little bit. That sounds pretty good. And then I'm going to connect macro control number 1 to that same knob, the WT position, and I'm going to bring this up quite a lot. So what happens at the bottom position, we get that, and at the top position, we get that. So now we can use this knob to sort of like morph the sound. So I'm going to call this knob morph. Now for the performer, you need to create a pattern that's interesting, and that is most of the time just a lot of work. Open up the load curve palette and drag in the shapes that you need. But I can also choose randomize all curves, and it's just going to randomize these curves, and I can play it back, see if I like it. Let's make a little bit of a smaller range. And let's press random again. So I like that, with the triplet kind of thing at the end. I can also change the intensity on the scrapyard. Totally gonna change the sound. Let's connect the performer to the intensity as well. That sounds pretty good. And I'm also gonna connect the morph knob to that same knob. So that's pretty interesting. I can make this a little bit less if I want. That sounds pretty interesting. Then I'm going to add a second waveform. This one is going to be a modern talking, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm gonna set this to band minus as well. Let's solo the modern talking, bring it down an octave. Let's connect the performer to the intensity. Let's bring that up a little. So we're getting a little bit of motion. I'm gonna do the same on the WT position. So we're getting a little bit more motion now. And then I can connect the morph to the WT position. So we're getting that. And what I'm then gonna do is I'm gonna bring the amp down all the way, and I'm going to connect the morph knob, the morph macro, to the amp of this particular one. Let's bring it not up all the way, just slightly below that. And what that's gonna do is, when the morph knob is all the way down, we have just the scrapyard wave playing, and that's already pretty, well, aggressive, pretty loud kind of sound. But when the modern talking is off and you bring this up, you can hear we lose a lot of character. We lose a lot of power. And by adding this, we're just adding a little bit of that modern talking in there. Next thing I'm going to do, let's add some ring modulation to oscillator 2. Bring the pitch down to about 24. And I'm gonna connect the morph to the ring modulation. So we're getting some ring modulation on that. I'm gonna add the phase to oscillator 1. And I'm gonna connect that same performer to the phase. Just a little bit, you know, you don't want to overdo this. I'm also gonna connect, let's see, the position. It's pretty interesting as well. Let's connect the performer to the position. Makes it sound pretty interesting. Now to get some more movement in this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to LFO number 6, and I'm gonna keep this unsynced. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this to one of these knobs. Let's see. Let's connect it to the WT position of the modern talking. And let's make this range go up a little bit. So we're now getting that motion in there. It's not that clear, it's really subtle, but there's definitely a difference. What I can now do, I like this a lot, is right here you can see we've got sinus uni, triangle uni, Chinese roof, and square uni, and 80-20 RMP uni. Now the cool thing about these is that they're basically, if I select one, you can see it's just using the positive side of the waveform. It's not going below that negative value. So what that means is that only this green part of the modulation range is being used by this LFO. The gray part is not even needed. You don't need to look at that. When I put it at this one, it's gonna follow the entire range, including that gray area. So I like that, and I'm gonna choose the Chinese roof, which sort of like has a peak in the middle. And let's connect this one to the intensity as well. This modulation is going to be much more exaggerated in the final patch. I'm going to connect that same LFO to the position. Let's bring that up a little bit. So we're getting a little bit more motion now. And what I also like to do is add this one to the amp on the modern talking. So you can hear on the normal setting now, on the lowest setting, we're still getting a little bit of that modern talking. I can bring the rate up if I want. So that sounds pretty interesting. So it all sounds a little bit thin right now, and I'm gonna solve that by going to the voicing tab, and on the voicing tab I'm gonna set the amount of voices to 3. So that means it's basically just gonna stack up 3 the same instances of this massive, and that's gonna sound like this. It's gonna be much louder, so I'm gonna bring the volume down a little bit. So that becomes a little bit better. I'm not too happy yet with this entire patch. That's better. That's better. I'm still getting a little bit of that modern talking, but not too much. What I then like to do is add a filter. So I'm gonna add a double notch filter to the first one. And let's connect the performer to the double notch. That sounds pretty interesting. Add that to the resonance as well, if it wants to. Yeah. Sounds pretty good. Then I'm gonna take the band reject. And I'm going to connect the performer to there as well. And I'm also going to connect the LFO to these. So we're getting just a little bit more motion by doing that. And I can always try this with a slower rate. Sounds pretty good as well. Maybe we can actually create two different versions. Now I could also blend this a little bit, see if that sounds good. I think that sounds pretty good. Now for the routing tab, what I'm gonna do right now, feedback is right here, and I'm gonna put feedback after insert number 1. So what's gonna happen is, let's see, I'm gonna put it after insert number 1. So what's gonna happen, the sound's going from the filter right here, from filter 1 into insert number 1. Then that output of the insert is being fed all the way back into the beginning of the synth, which then runs through the filters again and then back to the output. So if I now add a little bit of that feedback, we get a lot of low end from that. It makes everything sound a little bit lower. I kind of like that. Filter FM, let's add a little bit of that filter FM. Makes it even more gritty. Let's add that LFO to here, just a tiny amount. Yeah, that sounds good. But it still kind of like sounds like a mess, and that is because I'm going to restart this via gate. Which makes it a lot more gritty and louder as well, because all the oscillators are now starting at the exact same position within the waveform phase, instead of starting, well, at different positions for each individual voice. So now I can actually also play around with this, and that's pretty cool. So that really made a significant difference. That sounds really good. What I now can do is I'm going to enable pan positioning, and I'm going to bring this to sort of like between mono and full inversed. Creates a little bit more stereo whiteness, and then I'm going to connect that morph knob to the pan position, and I'm going to bring this not like that, so a little bit back, like that. So what happens is on the pitch bends, I'm going to morph this to the other part of the waveform, and then it's actually also going to widen up the sound. So that's really interesting. Let's add that wavetable position. Which basically is just going to change the WT position, the wavetable position, for each voice and oscillator with just a tiny amount. And that creates a different sound for each individual voice. It's going to make it sound a little bit more humanized, a little bit more different. Let's connect some of these to the filters as well. I'm gonna connect the morph to the band reject. And to the band width. Not so much. Let's connect it to the double notch as well. Now we're getting a really phasey kind of sound on that top setting of the morph. Which is really cool. So I'm just playing around a little bit, fine-tuning the settings. This is where you can get really creative. And that's also what requires a lot of time and effort. I'm gonna connect the performer to, or no, I'm gonna connect the LFO to the WT position. So that's going to add even more movement. And it's all following that same, or the performer, or the LFO, or the macro knob. So that's really, really cool. The pitch cutoff, I'm going to turn that on. And instead of moving the slider, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. And I'm going to add the morph to that, just a tiny amount. So we're getting more detuning on the higher portion of the macro knob, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna set the mix to here, and I'm gonna connect the morph to here and bring the range down. So we get that. Now I can add a browner tube. Just to make it all a little bit fatter. And I'm also gonna add the performer to the dry wet. So that's gonna add even more distortion, but it's gonna automate that distortion in terms of the performer. So that's really cool. Then I'm gonna add a dimension expander, bring the size down quite a lot, and the dry wet up a little bit. That's really gonna make it a lot bigger, a lot wider also in terms of the stereo spectrum. And then I'm gonna add an EQ, boost a little bit of the lows. Let's take out some of that frequencies that are determined by this knob. And I'm going to connect the performer to this knob. And I'm going to connect the LFO to that knob as well. Just tiny amounts. And let's bring up the high shelf. That sounds really big, really epic. Then I can go to insert number 1. On insert number 1, I'm gonna select a parabolic shaper. It's gonna add a little bit more movement to it. And I can also add a sine shaper. So that is what I've got right now. If you ask me, that sounds pretty good. I'm now gonna group this in an instrument rack. Then I'm gonna add an EQ8. Set the first EQ point to low pass, to about there. And let's take out a little bit of the mids. Because we don't really need that sub. Then I'm going to insert another massive. Or let's duplicate this one. Take off the EQ. Go into the instance of massive. And Yeah, this is gonna take a long time to undo all of this. I'm gonna see the time is at there. File new sound, bring the time up again. That's how you could do it as well. Set this one to a sine wave. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, let's set it to mono rotate, legato triller. Let's bring the pitch down to octaves. We're getting a little bit of a click at the start of the sound, so I'm gonna bring up the attack slightly. Let's bring the release up as well. A little bit more attack. That's better. Then layer that with the original. Let's bring the volume of both down to about -12, something like that. And let's add a glue compressor at the end just to bring up the volume. So that sounds pretty damn good. What I'm then going to do is I'm gonna click on the mid layer. Let's call this one mid and this sub. On the mid layer, I'm going to open up this little triangle box, press configure, and I'm going to move that morph knob. You can see it coming up right here. We can press configure again to close it, and then I'm gonna right click the morph and map that to macro 1. So now this macro knob controls the macro knob inside massive. Let's add a little bit of modulation to this. I want some modulation to happen over these pitch bends right here. Let's add a modulation right here. Not so much like that. Play around a little bit with the slopes. Then I'm gonna add a modulation right here. First one is gonna be a little bit higher, like that. And the second one is then gonna be about that. I'm gonna bring this one up a little bit. Play around with these slopes. Like that. Let's add an automation right here. That's roughly the same as the first one, except it goes a little bit higher and the slope is going the different direction. And then on this one, let's add a short automation right at the start. Drop it back down just a little bit, then drop it up really fast, and then all the way down again. Like that. I'm going to duplicate this automation and let's see how this sounds. Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. I'm not too happy yet with it. I'm gonna change it up a little bit. it's all about just playing around a little bit with this, trying to find interesting rhythms, interesting patterns. Maybe bring this up a little bit. You know, sometimes going a little bit less than all the way up is pretty interesting as well. As you can hear right there, it sounds really interesting. Let's add an automation right here. I really like that first part. Let's copy this, and I can paste that again right here. Paste it again here, and paste it here as well. So I think that sounds pretty good. It's actually a pretty decent Reese kind of bass, I think. Sounds something like a Reese. In the next bass design video, I'm gonna continue working on this one, and I'm gonna add a lot of different sources of modulation, and we're going to connect all these modulations to the same macro knob and a couple of other macro knobs as well, so we can get a lot of control about the sound. We're also going to add some more vowel character to this to really make that neuro kind of bass. And I'm going to show you some interesting tips and tricks for additional kinds of modulation. We're going to be looking into the resonator, we're going to be looking into the frequency shifter, and we're going to be looking into a lot of different kind of things. That was it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked this video, please subscribe for more videos. I'm doing about 3 to 5 tutorial videos a week. You can also come to my website, which is www.artfx-studios.com, on which you can find downloads for all the patches that I create in these videos. And you can also find interesting articles about music production. There's going to be VIP tutorial videos coming up soon, and there's also a music production forum on which you can talk with other producers or with me if you want, and you can actually ask me for help, and I'll try to get back at you as soon as possible. If you don't want to join my website or whatever, but you still want to have a little bit of a conversation with me, then please feel free to follow me on Twitter, send me a mention, and I'll try to get back at you as soon as possible as well. That was it for this video. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you soon. Peace!